Health guidelines often create controversy. Remember the new guidelines for women to start mammograms, and when that came out, what an uproar.
I know. You get used to something because it's done by proclamation. You do it for a number of years, and then when we find out that it's not the best way to go and you take it away, it's like you've taken something away from me when they've actually done you a favor.
Exactly. Well, now we have some new guidelines for hypertension, published in the January 2014 Journal of the American Medical Association. So how do we know if these guidelines are correct? Can we trust these guidelines?
Well, I'm not sure what we can trust, because a lot of people read things in textbooks that are written by somebody who has an opinion, and then all of a sudden it becomes a fact, and we replicate that.
Well, remember when they said that the healthy blood pressure was 100 plus your age?
Oh, that was right. That is what they said. And now we know that if you're 90 years old, is 190 over 80 a good blood pressure? We know it's not.
Yeah, so is still 120 over 80 the ideal blood pressure, do you think?
Well, it's a good blood pressure. I think there's a range of blood pressure is what this boils down to. I mean, if your blood pressure is 120 over 80, you'd think that would be perfect, and it's pretty good. But it depends on your age. For 120 over 80 for a baby is actually quite high. And for somebody who's older, it would be dynamite unless they had problems with circulation. If they had if they had plaques in their arteries, they might not be able to perfuse blood through to different parts of their heart or brain or kidneys, which could be a big deal.
So what does this article say the best blood pressure is for over 60 and for under 60?
Well, for people over the age of 60, to the surprise of most of us, they said 150 over 90 is an acceptable blood pressure. Now that's different than the 140 over 90, but you read all kinds of articles, and I have read all kinds of articles that talk about that how each blood pressure point rise increases the risk for heart attack or stroke or kidney disease by a certain percentage point. Now, these people have reviewed this whole topic and came up with the idea that maybe they were being a little bit overly aggressive. And it makes you wonder, who made those guidelines? Well, think about it. Who benefits from it? Obviously, the people who sell drugs, because you're going to be in more of a need.
But not if they've raised it.
That's right. But the old data is that way. So the new data now is coming out saying, well, maybe it wasn't 140 over 90. Maybe the data is more like 150 over 90 is clearer. Now, that will change sales for drugs a lot. When you look at just
So they're probably going to come back and change this.
Well,
they'll do another
somebody's
study.
going to try and do that. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry that makes hypertension drugs, antihypertensive drugs, would be silly if their business is to make money if they don't do a study that contradicts this one.
But on the other hand, what are the best drugs to use for hypertension?
Well,
if we're into drugs, first we always do lifestyle, but then if we get into drugs, the generic drugs are better. The ones that have run out of their patents because they've been around the longest.
They've been tested the
best.
best.
The new drugs, we already know that those are dangerous.
They just make a lot more money, and you're doing the experiments the studies that they didn't do because they didn't want to, and if they don't have to, they're not going to, because the more they learn about the problems that come with drugs, then the harder it's going to be to bring it to market.
Well, some of the problems that come with these blood pressure medications are they make people tired, and sometimes they faint, and it makes their blood pressure sometimes get too low, which is another reason why if you have hypertension and you are on medication, you should take your blood pressure every time before you take the medicine.
Exactly.
You don't want to take it if it's 90 over 60.
Right. And sometimes there are variations in blood pressure that lead to that, depending on your physiology in the moment. So we should be very careful. Your point about lifestyle medicine is huge. We should all be doing lifestyle strategies before ever thinking about a drug. And if you look at the physician's desk reference that has all these drugs in there for hypertension, they almost always come out and say, when lifestyle measures fail, but they don't go past that.
They don't tell you what they are.
Or how to go about doing it. And your doctor really doesn't do much of that either, because it's more conventional to just use the drug because it's easy and everybody accepts it as okay.
But you need to exercise. It's been proven that it lowers your blood pressure.
Oh, for sure.
To reduce your stress. Think about it. Hypertension.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Same
thing
and
with
to get
sleep.
enough sleep, yeah.
If you don't get enough sleep, you will have hypertension. You will develop bone loss so that you're more at risk for developing osteoporosis. You will be at risk for developing a whole lot of things like cancer. So
And your diet.
what you eat is what you are, it to a large extent. So if you don't eat the right stuff, or if you put the wrong stuff in, there are going to be problems from that.
Well, you know, my dentist was telling me about his mother, and he said she had hypertension, and so the doctor put her on medication. Well, she didn't want to take the medication because it made her tired and sluggish, and it made her feel kind of faint and all that sort of thing. But he insisted that she take it. Well, one of the things that happened was she fell down and she hit her head, and so she got like a hematoma or something, or a concussion, whatever it was. She got something bad in her head. Then she fell and she broke her hip. Well, to make a long story short, she ends up dying
From the complications. Yeah.
from the complications from having taken the drugs because the doctor didn't want to encourage the healthy lifestyle measures.
Well,
and she was in another country, so he wasn't even
I have to
her.
tell you, Vicki, doctors are not trained to teach lifestyle strategies. It's a very complicated science that we know a lot about, but we have to rely on that. The pharmaceutical industry doesn't want us to do that, and they manage a lot of what our education is going to be because a lot of the money that comes into medical schools, to medical centers, comes from the pharmaceutical industry. So there's a whole system of the good old boys club that keeps things going the way that they are, and it's not ideal.
Okay, so then what about pre-hypertension? Do we treat pre-hypertension?
Well, this article would suggest not, and I would agree with that. I think
But you could pay attention to your lifestyle.
we should all do that. If we have a healthier lifestyle, we know that you're going to live longer, you're going to be happier, you're going to have less morbidity, and you're going to feel better. So when we're talking about any illness, we should always look to the simple things first and the most powerful ones. That's lifestyle medicine. We start looking at drugs, we're looking at problems almost every time because every drug is not natural to the human body, or it could not be patented if it was, and that's going to interfere with the biochemistry and physiology within our cells every single time in ways that a lot of the time we're not going to find out until we have a symptom or it's too late.